Good afternoon, and welcome to Aero Insight on Safety Management Systems. My name is Dee Reimold. I'm the VP for Civil Aviation here at AIA, and I'm very happy to serve as moderator to this very impressive panel today. You can see in front of you, we intend to cover quite a bit today. The basics, what is SMS? Why is it so important? What is leading us to having this discussion today? And some of the avenues that the manufacturing community can utilize in order to meet the requirements of the new rule, but more importantly, to really inculcate a safety culture within their organizations. Next slide, please. So as I said, I'm Dee Reimold. I'd like to turn over and have the panelists introduce themselves and a little bit about the organization that they're representing. Chad?
Hi, my name is Chad Kirk. I am the Senior Director for Civil Aviation at Aerospace Industries Association. And my portfolio is fairly broad. It covers a lot of activities that our design and manufacturing organizations do, as well as some of our international regulatory engagement as well. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you, Chad.
All right.
Walter?
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry, David?
Oh, yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Dave Chapel. I'm Executive Chief Consulting Engineer at GE Aerospace. I've been working on the SMS area for well over a decade now. One of the things we did, of course, was to work in the voluntary SMS, starting with the pilot program back in 2012, work through the Part 21, SMS ARC, and then the various standards development, including the NAS 9927 and international standard. And I'm currently the co-chair on the SMS Design and Manufacturing Focus Group as well.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Walter DeRosier. I'm the Vice President of Engineering and Maintenance at the General Aviation Manufacturers Association. So we're an international association representing the manufacturers of the general aviation airplanes and rotorcraft, up-and-coming powered lift aircraft, everything from the small single-engine trainers up to intercontinental business jets and in between. Close partners with AIA in a lot of our activities and a lot of common members. I've been with Gamma for just over 25 years, responsible for all the requirements and standards in the design, the production, airworthiness, and continued operational safety of general aviation products. And with respect to SMS, we've been a long supporter of establishing and developing the framework. I had the opportunity to serve as the industry co-chair of the FAA's Part 21 SMS Aviation Rulemaking Committee that submitted our recommendations in 2014 and were reflected in the recent adoption of the SMS rule.
Thank you, Walter. And last but certainly not least, Tom, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Thomas Tiernan. I'm a section manager in Federal Aviation Administration in the Aircraft Certification Service. I've been working with the team for the last 3 years in SMS implementation to include internally at the FAA and Aircraft Cert, how to prepare ourselves for it, and then externally, how to communicate with all of industry and prepare them and prepare ourselves for this rollout of SMS across aircraft certification in design and manufacturing organizations. I've been with the FAA for 19 years now. Started with SMS in the 121s in the pilot program, and saw that through I actually left just before the rule came out, and then I went over to Aircraft Cert, so I've been over here since then, and I'm glad to be with you guys today.
Thank you very much. As you all can tell, there is just a wealth of expertise on this panel, on this topic, and most importantly, on the criticality of our continued focus on aviation safety. So let's start with the basics. What is SMS? I'm not going to read the slide. You all can read that for yourself. But what it really is a programmatic approach to a systematic set of outcomes that are designed to check and double check practices, processes, and safety norms. And this is, it's funny because I've talked SMS to a lot of people, and you get variations of the theme, but it always comes back to one thing, and that is the continual improvement of aviation safety. And that's why I think, Tom, that the FAA leaned forward on this rule, got it out pretty darn quickly, compared to some other rulemaking activities. But I think, what I'd like to maybe go off script here a little bit, and Dave, again, I could read this definition out, but because GE has been, very, very forward leaning in terms of implementing the voluntary SMS, talk to us about how you all defined SMS in your organization.
Yeah, sure, Dee. For us, the evolution, and I think you hit it exactly right. It really is a continuous improvement activity. We really had some great safety processes that came out of the 1989 Sioux City accident way back then, some industry activities in terms of rotor integrity, steering committee, and other things like that. But internally, we did a lot of searching and decided that this concept of a safety program management team is really the way to resolve some of the key product safety issues. And the fundamental behind that is that no individual makes a safety decision. So it really is a team process in terms of deciding whether something is or is not safety, and then really how fast you have to respond if it is indeed a safety issue at the end of the day. And that framework really goes back to around 2000. But what we found as we were starting our journey on SMS is, some of the key things such as communication, promotion, working across the enterprise were the gaps that we identified early on, and have put obviously things in place to address that. And I feel overall, when we look at the rule, as Walter mentioned, the Part 21 SMS ARC back in that time frame, we really took a critical look and said, where are these gaps? Filled them. But as we know, over the last 10 years, things continue to evolve.
Yeah. And I think before we leave this particular slide, Walt, you and I have talked many times about SMS. And I know you've been a huge safety advocate, you and Gamma. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you've messaged that out to the Gamma membership?
So a big part of SMS and I would say for all aviation manufacturers, the principles of safety management are not new. Every organization in aviation, we manage risk, we manage compliance, we manage continued operational safety of the products. But as Dave just mentioned, tying that together and strengthening that, how do we become more effective? How do we bring in everybody in the organization to be a part of that safety role and that safety responsibility is how we can be more effective and more successful in what we do in implementing day to day. So I think a big part of the discussion is to understand that it's not new. This is not a bolt-on additional set of processes and requirements that we have to do on top of everything that companies already do day to day. This is really bringing into the organization and building in some of these everyday processes, everyday roles, and responsibilities for individuals to contribute to a stronger safety management process, stronger safety management system, bringing things together by tying not only the processes that we perform, but the culture of the organization, the communication of the organization. Bringing those together makes it a stronger, better system. And I think one of the key messages is understanding it's not about this new rule and complying with a new rule or implementing something new and complying with it. It's about how to make a stronger, more effective process, which makes for a more successful business, a more successful company, safer products for our customers, all of which contribute to the overall success and the health. So that's a big part of it, is getting away from the idea of, oh, these are all new requirements with burden, to understanding, hey, we're looking at taking what we already do today and how do we strengthen them? How do we tie them together? How do we improve performance, which has win-win benefits across the board?
Yep. No, well said. Well said. And so what I want to do, Chad, I mean, obviously, is as you all listening on our webinar today have heard, that there's huge organizational and corporate emphasis on the importance of SMS. Chad, I'm going to ask you to talk through the 4 components because, we talked a lot about the why, right? And let's talk a little bit about the what.
Sure. So I think if there's anything that a person or an organization takes away from this chart, the 4 main components, it's that center area. And just an overview of the 4 safety policy. So this is where your C-suite needs to be engaged with setting safety policy, but also on that bottom right quadrant, safety promotion. What is the message that you're sending every day to your team, whether it be on the manufacturing floor, all the way up through your total engineering staff, up through your C-suite executives. Then safety and assurance, make sure that the risk mitigations that you've implemented are actually working in identifying those new hazards. And it includes data collection tools. It includes things like voluntary reporting without in a just culture. Safety promotion is everything from training to daily meetings of your production staff to report incidents and accidents and how to overcome those risks. Is it as simple as wearing the right PPE, or is it something a little bit more involved? And then safety risk management. And this one in particular is something for new companies that are in the world of AAM or UAS. When I was in the FAA, the first question we would ask a company that approached us for a partnership was, do you have an SMS? And it was a lot of deer in the headlights. But teaching that SMS is a way for you to mitigate your operational risks when you're operating over people or in populated areas or in controlled airspace. Just learning the fundamentals, as Walter mentioned, didn't just get the company to learn what SMS is, but you would watch these companies level up by exponential quadrants. And it really is just something amazing to watch and amazing to see. Once you understand that SMS isn't, well, I wanted to say rocket science, but SMS is involved in rocket science as well. But really, the key takeaway here is that interchange between safety assurance, safety risk management, and safety policy. None of those live in a silo. They are interactive on a moment-to-moment basis, and it really is a team sport. Everyone's involved. Everyone is an SMS persona. Everyone has a role to play.
That's great, Chad. Thank you. Before we go into the next slide, I realize didn't mention, we realize we're putting a lot of information out pretty quickly. If anyone has any questions, please put them into the chat. We'll monitor the chat and we'll make sure, and we can, if you have a question as a speaker is going through, we'll try to get to it in a timely manner and save a little bit of time at the end for some final questions. So now, Tom, on the next slide, the FAA SMS rule that came out in May. Can you talk to us a little bit about this and in particular, what are some of the key factors that organizations need to consider in the kinds of resources and tools? So if you can talk to us for a little bit in some detail, that'd be appreciated.
Sure. No, thank you. So like you said, the final rule came out in April of this year. It was effective May 28th of 2024. And implementation is required for companies that produce a product and they hold the type certificate and they hold a production certificate for the full product. There's also for companies that license the design to a company that produces the full product, as well as companies that are licensees of the design who produce the full product. So if you hold the design and you license it to someone who's producing the full product, or if you're that person that's producing, or that company that's producing the full product, you're the licensee, you're required to implement an SMS. Like I say, the date for that for implementation is May 28th of 2027. But for purposes of this discussion, what I really want to talk about is the implementation plan. That's the first, we'll call it fire, that needs to be put out. And that's due 6 months from the effective date, which is 11/28 of 2024. For anybody who's looking, that is Thanksgiving Day. So we did actually talk to our AGC, our general counsel, and they said that they will accept that Friday. So that Friday, the 29th, implementation plans are required to be submitted to the FAA. Really, the FAA is providing the AC 2158, which goes over SMS implementation. There's also a template Excel spreadsheet workbook that it goes over all the elements of the SMS, and it allows you to do a gap analysis while you're doing it. This is an acceptable way to submit your implementation plan. I think we have a copy of that. If could pull it up, please, and I will. Okay, thank you very much. So what I want to just do, and this was submitted to all the companies that we had on the list, but what we're asking everyone to do is this is an acceptable means to submit it to the FAA, to our SMS mailbox. And it goes through part 5, and it goes through each element of part 5. And for each requirement, there's a line. If the company has that process in place already, or let's just say the safety policy. Does their safety policy contain their safety objectives? If it does, then you would just put in the reference column where that is, and you would mark it as complete. Does your policy contain a commitment to fulfill objectives? Yes, it does. You would mark where that is, and you would show it as complete. As you work through this, areas where there's gaps, where you currently don't have a process or procedure, or it's missing something, you would put down where it's going to be, and then a planned completion date. Remembering that the SMS has to be implemented no later than May of 2027, planned completion date should be prior to that. That'd be something we'd be looking for. As you work through this template, you'd go through each element from the 4 components and your system description. You complete it either as having it, or there's a gap, and when you'll plan on having it and where it will be. And that's an acceptable SMS implementation plan. It can be submitted to the FAA. We will review it with an SMS team, and we'll contact you if there's any problems, and we'll also send you a letter of approval showing that we've approved your plan after we've evaluated it. So again, the implementation period is 3 years from May of 2024. This is the first gate. This is submitting the SMS implementation plan. That's if you take away anything from what I'm saying, please remember this is required. So
thank you, Tom. So I think, again, just to underscore these deadlines and part of the reason that we were anxious to get this webinar underway is the fact that there is this looming Thanksgiving deadline that those companies that are affected by the rule have to comply to. So Tom, just again, I think you did the good setup of the implementation plan. If we can walk through your next series of slides here so that the folks know what happens once the FAA gets its hands on the plan.
Sure. So we've created work instructions internal for our team, and what we're going to do for TCPC holders, there's a principal inspector that's assigned to that company, as well as an engineer. They will be the minimum for our SMS team. We could also use, if there's an ODA, we may use the ODA. Anyway, the FAA is going to form an SMS team, and we're going to review your implementation plan. Once we've reviewed it and we ensure that it is compliant with the requirements, we're going to then send you your letter of approval. Okay, so that basically opens up for you to develop and implement your SMS. You have until May of 2027, but you don't have to wait that far. You can do it up front. We can evaluate it up front. But what we've done is we've developed data collection tools. Now, there's 2 sets. There's one for verification, which we're going to do first, and we'll do that after the implementation deadline or sooner if requested by the company. And what we're going to do, there's 5. One for each component and one for your system description. And they're basically data collection tools. There are a series of questions, and they're designed so that for each requirement in part 5, we're going to verify that you've developed that process or it's within your system. And those will also serve as records for us. We'll fill them out. We're going to keep them as records to show that you've complied with the rule. What's nice, though, is we're going to furnish those to you ahead of time, blank, so that as you're developing your SMS, you can look at the data collection tools that we're going to use, and you can do a self-assessment. Does my process, does it make this muster here? And if you can answer yes, I'm sure that we'll be able to. So the nice thing is we're going to give you the assessment tools, the data collection tools, and you'll be able to do a self-evaluation prior to asking the FAA to come and do that. One other thing, just to give everybody all the information, if you request us to do it prior to the implementation deadline, if we were to find something, it's prior to the implementation deadline, so there's no non-compliance. We can work with you and you can change it, and there's no harm, no foul. There's no non-compliance, so that's another plus. The second set of data collection tools is what we're going to call an evaluation, and it's the same 5 DCTs, but the first ones are designed to verify that you've developed the processes and implemented them. The second set is to show that they're functioning. So we're going to come back in about a year after we've done the verification, between 12 and 18 months, and we're going to go back through and we're going to look to see that the SMS has been functioning, it's producing records, safety assurance is monitoring what it's supposed to. If there's an SRM trigger that you've done an SRM, that safety promotion's working, you're creating records. So we want to first verify that you've developed everything, then give you a year or so to work your SMS, understanding that we're all learning. You guys are going to, when you flip the switch and start, you may very well say, you know what, this isn't quite working the way we want. So let's change it. And we fully expect that to happen. We're learning too. So that gives you that year and a half. And then same thing, we're going to give you the evaluation DCTs, and you can do the self-assessment of your evaluation. And then we'll come in and do the evaluation. When I say we, that's the SMS team. And those will be records. Those will be records to show that it's been implemented and it's functioning in compliance with Part 5. So that's kind of the whole implementation process. The implementation plan submission to the FAA and our approval of it, and then the verification when you've developed your processes, and then the evaluation once it's up and running and producing records. So that's kind of just an overview of the implementation process from the FAA. This slide here goes over our roles and responsibilities. So we're going to approve the plan and issue a letter. We're going to accomplish the verification DCTs and issue a letter to show that we've completed them. We're going to do the same thing with the evaluation DCTs. And then beyond that, we'll perform ongoing surveillance, monitoring the SMS. We're still developing that order. It's mostly done, but we want to make sure we get it right. So we're working through how do we start to monitor the performance of the SMS rather than just, are you compliant with Part 5? How do we see that it's a continuous improvement, that you're taking those records and that safety assurance data and that you're evaluating it and the continuous improvement part. So again, that's kind of just an overview of what implementation looks like. And for any questions, there's our SMS mailbox. Please send us an email. That's also coincidentally the mailbox that you'll submit the implementation plan to. So anyway, next slide, please.
Tom, before we go to the next slide, there was a question for you, if you all charge for the service.
We do not charge. We do not charge. This is absolutely, you're already paying for it.
Dee, just one thing to kind of drive home everything Tom has just said is if you read into this is really a regulator and industry collaboration. The FAA has hosted several webinars throughout the summer. I believe those started in July, and every week there was a different webinar. And I think just, the fact that you are given tools to self-audit, that you're given templates, for those that have been using a voluntary SMS, it's a simple analysis of what you've got and adapting for the deltas. If you're brand new to the SMS world and the rule applies to you, you've got a template to follow. And you've, again, until that full implementation date, you've got multiple opportunities to address whatever issues with the FAA. And obviously, the rule is scalable. So if you're a huge operation, your SMS might be a little bit more robust. If you're a small operation, it might be more concise. And I think it's important to remember all of that, as well as, just the FAA is an open door to collaborate with and identify those areas, because we're all beneficiaries of safety, right? We all fly in our personal lives, whether you're a private pilot or you fly commercially for work a lot. This is an important aspect of that. And it really is a team sport, and everyone is involved from top to bottom.
Yeah, if I could just add, thank you, Chad. Absolutely, we're here to help you guys be successful in implementing SMS. The last thing we want to do is stress out a company that thinks that this is overwhelming and overburdened, and we want you to be successful. The scalable, absolutely. The smaller companies, there shouldn't be a big investment to develop and implement an SMS. We have absolutely put together a workshop presentation, a guidebook. And again, if you're interested, if you're one of those smaller companies and you'd like, we're offering multiple service. We can do virtual sessions like this, or we will come out to your company and do a 1 or 2 day, whatever it takes, and go over how you can scale the SMS to the size and complexity of your company. So we understand that this is a big change for some companies, and we want to be there and help to support you through this change.
No, well said, Tom. Thank you so much for that very helpful overview. And Chad, again, couldn't agree more with your comments. Before we move on to some of the other supporting slides, let me ask Walter and Dave anything that you all are thinking. Walter, either from the perspective of what you're hearing from your members or in the course of your work, or Dave, what you all are encountering within GE. Open to you all.
I think one of the things Chad mentioned, I think is really important for folks to understand is the concept of scalability. So we talked about how the rule is performance-based, and I think that was very intentional in the approach that was taken to adopt the rule and the framework of SMS, because the overarching SMS and the elements that we talked about are the same regardless of the size and complexity of the organization. But in the context of scalability, what we hear across the industry and most of the discussions that occurred when we were trying to develop recommendations, do we want to recommend that the FAA mandate or regulate and implement SMS as a requirement or not? None of the discussion was really about the benefits and the value of SMS within your organization. Each organization can implement in a way and provide some real benefit and value, and we could see different ways of doing that. We did see a lot of value in having a structured, organized way of doing it to try to take advantage of best practices and spread that out so that everybody does that. But most of the discussion on scalability was about how is the FAA going to implement it as a requirement? How are they going to oversee it? So that's where scalability becomes critically important. And it really comes in the context of scalability of the product. For the Gamma membership, we're talking about small manufacturers of 2-seat training airplanes, all the way up to intercontinental business jets and airliners, piston engines, all the way up to high bypass turbofan engines and what GE Aviation and Aerospace does. How do you apply the safety continuum and that kind of scalability? But then there's also the size of the organization. Even the kinds of organizations that are required to have SMS in the rule that Tom just talked about, those organizations that hold a type certificate and a production certificate. Well, that includes balloon manufacturers. That's a great example of an organization that's affected. And some of those have could be 4 real principals, 4 people involved. So scalability is pretty critical there. I think the good news is a lot of that has been built in to the performance-based rule and the processes itself. A big part of scalability is also recognized by industry and our industry standard for SMS, SM0001, which is implementing safety management system and design, manufacturing and maintenance organizations. We're going through a revision right now, and we're trying to add additional chapter focused on scalability and what that means for the organization to implement that. But then what Tom just talked about, I thought was very telling as well. Even the FAA approach of the implementation plan, you saw the template they provided. It can be as complex and as big and complex as the organization and the product, or as simple and small as the organization and the product. But also how they're approaching the DCTs. They're doing the verification followed by evaluation. It's not the checklist of, do you have everything in this 10,000 line item checklist? It's get the processes in place and let's evaluate it and see how it's performing. So all of that is scalable. So I think that's one of the areas there's always been a lot of industry question and concern about this. And it's set up in a way that it does provide that. Now everybody has to work at it to make it successful.
Yeah, Dee, I would add, I think Walter hit on it. One of the things we learned along the way was, we participated in that pilot program back in 2012, and we purposely only looked at our life management process. I mean, that was the focus, not necessarily the company, but that was how we put on the training wheels and wanted to see how things worked. And I can't encourage enough, I put it on our lessons learned all the time, which is get started now, get started on something so that you get the system, present, and then, get it running, even if it's a portion of your company, just so you can get those lessons learned. Again, some of the history for GE Aerospace was, we kicked off our SMS internally in January 2013. Before the rule ever hit the street, even before the voluntary system was an option. And, we gathered data for, 3 or 4 years before we even went to the voluntary system. And it was invaluable in terms of, being able to look back. And now that we've got over a decade of SMS information, we are, in fact, interrogating that and using it for forward-looking type activities. So I can't encourage enough to just get something out there. It's not going to be perfect. That's why we have continuous improvement. Even though, like I said, we've had ours out there for a decade, we've, with the rule hitting the street, we've had a flurry of activity and just kind of reassessing yet again some key areas related to SMS.
The one other area too that I just thought of was SMS is certainly international, and AIA and Gamma and others have helped build an international SMS standard, SM0001, which is now under revision for Rev C. But Walter, do you want to just kind of delve into that a little bit and just the impetus that brought that about? And then I think, in addition to that, I think that this SMS rulemaking was not enforced on us by the FAA. This is something that the industry supported. We saw the success for commercial airlines under Part 121. So this is a continued evolution of safety, again, through that whole cycle from regulators or C-suite maybe in this model, all the way down to people who are actually out hooking and jabbing, flying and maintaining every single day.
So thank you, Chad. I think what you said was really important in terms of SMS is not new, right? We've had pieces and elements of SMS, but it's across in many different industry sectors. And so even within aerospace, the idea of establishing structured, formalized implementation of safety management systems is something that was internationally recognized as very valuable and very beneficial for the aerospace aviation industry. And in fact, the international community at ICAO adopted SMS as a standard and recommended practice. Mm-hmm. And initially, it was really focused on the international air carriers, the 121 type of air carriers worldwide that operate throughout the globe, and putting that into place. And as part of that, that continued to be expanded and recognizing, hey, applying it to navigation service providers, applying it to airports. Currently, the international standards at ICAO applies it to Part 21, organizations that design and produce products. And so that's an international standard as well. So that was really the basis of industry coming together. And as Chad mentioned, AIA and Gamma working to facilitate the coordination among the international aviation manufacturers to take a look at a common approach of how we would structure our SMS. Because if SMS is going to be an ICAO requirement and implemented in every state, well, obviously we design and certify with the FAA here in the United States. We validate with our bilateral countries. We export and operate our products in nearly every country in the world. They're all going to be having a various form of SMS requirement because of the ICAO SARP. And so we recognized we wanted there to be a common recognition, a common approach to do that, especially as manufacturers, because we operate in every country. And so we developed the international standard to establish that common framework. It is modeled follows the ICAO Annex 19, which is the SMS framework. When EASA came out and implemented in their system, they have the EASA rules and how they put that into their context. We updated our international SMS standard to have an appendix that really maps and aligns of how it fits within the EASA system. Now that the FAA has its rule out, we're updating the ICAO or our international SMS standard again, doing very similar thing with the FAA's Part 5 framework and how that maps to the international standard. And the whole idea is to make sure that as manufacturers, our SMS systems and processes that we put into place not only promote and enhance and strengthen our system and our safety management of our products, but then can be recognized and accepted worldwide as we deliver and support our products and our customers wherever they operate in the world.
That's really great. Thanks, Chad and Walter. So I think we've talked, quite a bit about, the value of lessons learned and the value of, sharing within the broader aerospace community, what's worked well and what has not worked particularly well. There's other avenues that have been established. So I've asked for the next slide, please. And Dave, I think you chair this particular focus group. Can you talk to us a little bit about the objectives and kind of where the group is and really how, if someone on this webinar wanted to join in these discussions, how they could do that?
Sure. Thanks to, we, as a notes here, this really kicked off in September of 2022. But even before that first session, we spent several months trying to define a charter of what this team was really going to do, and then we ended up having 6 things, and I'm not going to go through all 6 of them, but I think, the key one's really at the top of the list, which is really sharing best practices and experiences, how, across industry do we approach SMS on this global basis that Walter was just talking about. And, the goal and the objective was, what are some of the hot points? Suppliers is one of those topics. How do suppliers integrate into the broader system? The Part 5 rule and even EASA talks about interfaces. So how do we strengthen those interfaces across not only just the design and manufacturing space, but maintenance, as airlines, et cetera. And then, another hot topic that we're really excited about addressing coming up at Infoshare, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, is organizational risk. I think we all face challenges with organizational risk, and this team has, again, tried to tackle it and come up with an approach, again, with the FAA in the room that, I think is going to be a real great way of moving forward. So, Walter mentioned and talked about the international standard. One of the other objectives is to support that activity. Some of the things we're putting in Rev Charlie are related to interfaces and suppliers and so on. So there's some direct connection there. Many of the people who are part of the steering committee for this group also are very actively engaged in the international standard. And another area we haven't really talked about too much today is, SMS training is a big issue as well. It's part of the rule. And, this team also is working to address the issues of, can we really define personas related to aviation activities across the industry where a certain type of SMS training is consistent across the board. I mean, that is one of the things we're talking about today in this team as well. So some interesting stuff on that front as well. I don't think I answered your question about who you can contact. Well, you can either contact myself or Jonathan Archer at SAE, and I think we can get his information out there as well. But I can't stress enough, that one of the things we've done every month is to have webinars related to SMS topics as part of this group as well. And the whole point of that is to, again, share this information, see how people are addressing various issues as they're walking the journey on SMS. And just by sending your name to myself or Jonathan, we'll get you on the list, and you get full access to all those previous webinars and everything else. So it's just a great source of information.
And it doesn't cost anything other than
That's right. Just
some time.
the time to fill out a form. Jonathan will ask you for a form, but
Yeah,
it's really easy and it's definitely worth doing.
yeah,
Your time and your contributions. It's
Yeah.
an engagement forum. So
yeah.
Yes, that's true too, Walter. Thank you.
Well, I think Dave, you certainly highlighted, and I know the other panelists have said that the real value of initiatives like or pursuits like SMS are, really successful as a collaboration between government and industry. Tom, any comments on, the engagement that the FAA has in groups like this, and the value that you all as the regulators see?
I wish there had been more of these. I mean, I think this has just really been an incredible success. If I could just for a second, it started with companies that were in the voluntary program. And I just want to just say for the FAA, the voluntary program is still out there. We still are available for help to develop an SMS. If you're not required by rule and you still want SMS, we're here. So that same mailbox, we'll be happy to go over the voluntary program with you and let you know the process. But I would say from our perspective for this D&M focus group, I feel that we're really, when we're in those rooms, we're really, it's not the FAA and industry. We're all partners in safety. We really are. We're there to help make industry successful. And so what we get by participating in that group is to hear where the concerns are, where the struggles are, and also where the wins are. And that helps us to determine how we best can be supportive in our guidance, in our rules, in our oversight, in our training, how we prepare our folks for the mindset for SMS as we go through implementation and oversight. So I think it's really been eye-opening for the FAA to participate and hear how industry is taking on management of safety. So.
And just to build on that, I think one of the real strengths that we've seen in the SMS focus group is it brings together, as Tom mentioned, a broad range of the industry and the regulator. But when we talk about industry, it really is a broad range. And so I did want to highlight one of the things Tom said. It's not just those organizations that are required to have SMS, those TC/PC holders. It's not just the big, large organizations. We have a full range. In fact, our monthly webinars are really value opportunity where we see significant exchange and sharing of lessons learned, best practices, companies who've been doing it for a much longer period of time, like Dave mentioned, GE Aerospace has a lot of experience in their progress and evolution, but with that comes a lot of learning, and they share that across the broader industry. And so we have a lot of the smaller manufacturers and the smaller companies who participate. We have suppliers who participate who are not required to have SMS, who are not part of the voluntary SMS program, but are looking to contribute into our broader safety system, whether it means integrating and feeding and supporting the SMS of their customer, the OEMs, or whether they choose to voluntarily have an SMS of their own. But we also have startup organizations that don't hold a TC or PC yet, but they're planning to. And they're already starting to participate. So I think that valuable sharing of knowledge and information and understanding really helps. One of the key things that we hear across a diverse range of small, big companies, we know the companies that are required to have SMS are working. They've been in the voluntary SMS program with FAA. They're moving down that path. What was really interesting is to hear from the number of companies who aren't required to have SMS ask, but can I still do SMS? Can I still work with industry? Can I still work with FAA? So Tom, I'm really glad you highlighted the voluntary program is strong and alive. The FAA is fully supporting that. You can still do a voluntary SMS with FAA, get recognized formally with FAA as part of a voluntary SMS, even if you're not required to have SMS by rule. This really shows and promotes how much of industry sees value and benefit in doing this in terms of strengthening their systems, but also how much value the FAA sees in continuing to support something like this by supporting a voluntary program to implement SMS. So this includes major STC modifiers, for example, who are doing a lot of mods, are interested in having that kind of process built into their systems. Some of the major system suppliers, some of the major avionics companies that are suppliers to the OEMs. And it just makes good business sense, as I said earlier. So the voluntary SMS is there as part of that as well.
Yeah, I just want to I just double down on everything everyone just said. It's SMS, even in its function and applied function, does not live in a vacuum, right? So if you're mitigating safety risk on your production floor, you're mitigating programmatic risk if you've got an 8 to 10 year TC program, or if you're a brand new Part 107 small business, having an SMS and you practice it and you apply it will make sure that you're buying less hardware, that you have to do less hard maintenance on your aircraft. I mean, it really does apply to everyone. So I think that, if this is something that you're interested in and you have the time to dedicate and share, and listen, as Walter mentioned, the new startups, they have a different mindset. They're very data driven. So they might have some tools and processes that they can share with the legacy organizations. And then before you know it, this whole ecosystem starts to revolve around that. So, you see me head nodding a lot and smiling because this is really just something that is fantastic for anyone of any size organization to start to implement, whether it's a requirement or voluntary. And I think that joining the SMS Design and Manufacturing Focus Group costs you nothing except for money to travel. And even then, these webinars are available to you. I think it is a huge benefit to not just you and your organization, but the ecosystem largely.
Wow. I mean, just so much convergence on these vehicles and these opportunities to continue to expand the world of SMS. But wait, there's more. Uh, could we go to the next slide, please? And Walter, let me ask you to maybe talk a little bit about Infoshare for people that don't know what Infoshare is. And since we have one coming up, to really point out the value of this venue.
Yeah, so we refer to Infoshare. It's more formally known as the Aviation Safety Infoshare, but it's a collaboration of industry and government. And I'm a relative newcomer to Infoshare. I've only been going for the last 5 years, but it's something that's been in place for quite some time. I can't even give it justice by saying how long, but it primarily was with the airlines and the 121 air carriers coordinating together with FAA in a voluntary collaborative way to do coordination and sharing and discussion of everything related to safety. What are the best practices that each of the organizations have identified? What are some of the common hazards? What are some of the common risks? What are the common ways that different organizations have approached them? What's worked? What has not worked? So it's just that information sharing, which is where it gets its name, and the sharing that knowledge, but also the sharing of hazards and risks that one organization sees and shares with others. And so the collaborative form of the Infoshare is a closed session. It's intended to be just those organizations managing safety, responsible for safety within aviation. It started with just the 121 air carriers. It now has breakout sessions that focuses in on different sectors. So there's a Part 135 sector that has a breakout session. There's a rotorcraft sector that has a breakout session that focuses on those. And the most recent one is the new one that's on design and manufacturing SMS. So that's now a breakout session as part of Infoshare. We're one of the newer groups. Tremendous learning opportunity from a lot of these 121 air carriers and other organizations who have not only been implementing SMS for a much longer period of time with longer experience, but it's also been a regulatory mandate in working in collaboration with each other, with suppliers and their vendors, and with FAA and government. And so a lot of lessons learned in terms of sharing that. So it's a tremendous opportunity of aviation only closed sessions to discuss best practices in safety, common areas of interest, risk, hazards, what's working, what's not working, and continuing to promote continued advancement in being able to have strong, healthy safety systems and managing those risks before they're problems. So part of the plug here is the next Infoshare session is in Kansas City on November 13 and 15. And we will have a breakout session as part of the larger conference on the 14th and 15th. That will be for the design and manufacturing SMS.
So Walter, I'll be bold enough to give a frame of reference into how long Infoshare has been around, and more importantly, how it has grown exponential with its value. When the first Infoshare I went to, I don't think there were 40 people in the room. The last time I spoke at Infoshare a few years ago, there were around 2,000. So again, I can't underscore enough what an opportunity Infoshare provides, not only for the program and the rich content of the presentations and the breakouts, but also the sheer networking opportunities, the people that you can talk to, and I think more business can get done in an afternoon of when you're talking to people, and much like we've been talking about today. I've got this problem, and sharing lessons learned and sharing experiences and, the best practices. So again, none of us get any kind of stipend for plugging Infoshare, but I think we're all real true believers in the collaboration, one more time, between government and industry. So that, any other, Dave, you've been a little quiet over there. Anything you wanted to add about Infoshare, or Tom, you?
Well, I'd just add again that, much of what I was just talking about in terms of the design and manufacturing, SMS group, focus group, a lot of those special activities translate right into Infoshare to share at a broader level. I mean, Walter mentioned that, we've got our main sessions are on Thursday afternoon and Friday morning. And again, we're talking Part 5 implementation. We're talking about the international standard. We're going to talk about supply chain and suppliers. We're going to talk about organizational risk. So again, it's just a loaded, agenda of very current and relevant topics. So it's definitely worth going to.
Thank you, Dave. Tom, anything?
The only thing I would add is I found that as we've gone through and matured the D&M side, how many new companies in UAS or AAM are developing they're pre-TC. They don't even have a design yet, and they're already thinking about SMS. They're already out there at these Infoshares learning, getting that networking going, because they're going to build SMS from the ground up as they design their companies. So that just gives me it's an indicator of how important safety is in aviation when these new companies already know we'll be that much ahead if we design and build our culture with safety in mind. So I just think that Infoshare has been really beneficial for those companies, all companies, but for the newer companies to get a feel for the passion there for safety.
Well said. Thank you all. So that is the end of the formal part of the discussions. Haven't seen many questions. This is your opportunity while you have this panel together to ask some questions. And obviously, if you have questions after the fact, send them to us and we'll get them answered. I would say also that we view webinars like this as wonderful educational opportunities. But there's more we want to do, and that we have done and want to do in terms of making sure that the SMS concept is understood and promulgated throughout the industry. I would say, certainly, Chad, you've been working on getting an SMS white paper done that we will post on the AIA website. Walter, I know Gamma's got some educational materials. You want to talk to us about that for a few minutes?
Yeah, we know that we referenced a couple of different standards here. We referenced a couple of different reports. Those are all available from our respective websites. We were able to, AI and Gamma were helped sponsor an information session that the FAA did several briefings at when the rule first came out. So a lot of that material and those information and those briefing slides and a video of that is available from the website. And then to me, a huge library of best practices and experiences. Dave mentioned the SMS focus group. It's collaboratively sponsored by AIA, Gamma, and SAE. SAE houses the structure to help support the SMS focus group. And on the SAE website, they house a location where the participants in the focus group can have access to this entire library of all of our previous webinars.
Dave?
No, I was just gonna, highlight, Walter stole my thunder a little bit because yes, the again, access to those webinars, and even those have evolved. We've reached the point where, again, you can go over policy, and we did several years ago. And, with the rule hitting the street, there are some things that change. For example, system description is a great example, operating environment. The rule changes how we were just talking a couple of years ago. So, even though the webinar stuff exists from a couple of years ago, there are new, fresh versions out there, reflecting the new updates to the rule.
Thank you. And Tom, I know the FAA has a trove of SMS information. Anything you wanted to highlight?
I would just encourage, FAA.gov and just SMS search, and you'll find, we have internal SMSs for air traffic organization. Airports is now under a final rule. The 121s, of course, but that's also been extended to Part 135s and subpart 91, 147 operators. So there's information there. Our D&M group, we have information on our SMS, as well as it references out to much the same reference material you guys have spoken to. So again, just FAA.gov and look at SMS. And some of it you do have to dig down into under safety programs and stuff, but it's good information when you get.
Thanks, Tom. Well, I want to thank this wonderful panel for their insight and discussion today. And again, encourage those of you who are participating today, if you think of anything at all that we missed or that we can answer more fully, reach out certainly to us. We'll make sure, you can send it to Chad or Ananda, and we'll make sure it gets to the right person on this panel or the right part of the organization. And there is no question too small or, whatever. Our next Aero Insight is coming up on October 23rd. As you can see, it's building the digital thread in aerospace supply chains, which, sounds thrilling to me. I just need to go figure out what that all means. So with that, thank you all so much for your kind participation today, and we look forward to seeing you at another upcoming Aero Insight event. Thank you. Bye-bye.